Weather Wednesday. I'm here in front of our Science on a Sphere to talk about seasons. If you recall, last week we were talking about what causes the seasons. Do you remember what that reason is? As a review, let's take a look at this picture here over my shoulder. And this is a picture of all the planets and their tilt. You see, our planet goes through seasons because our Earth is tilted on its axis. This causes the direct rays from the sun to change from the northern hemisphere to the southern hemisphere and back again. We experience some beautiful seasons, and we are in the midst of that right now as the summer is changing to the fall and changing to the winter. As we look around us, we can see all kinds of changes. We can see the trees changing the colors of their leaves. We can see animals moving from one place to another. If you look up at the sky, you might see a big V of birds flying south for the winter. There are lots of pictures, demonstrations, lots of evidence of the seasonal changes around us. So I'd like to take a closer look at that today using Science on a Sphere. And I threw out a question on our social media yesterday about what animal travels the farthest in its migratorial pattern. So as it moves, as it migrates during the seasons, what animal travels the farthest? We're going to take a look at that today. But first off, just some beautiful pictures just to kind of start things out. Some beautiful pictures of fall around the world. And this doesn't just happen in the United States. We see seasonal changes all over the world. And that's kind of fun to talk about, fun to look at. So let's take a look at our blue marble here for seasons. This is looking at snow and ice. You can see that as we go through an accelerated season here, seasonal pattern, we can see how the snow and ice changes. This is looking over Russia and Asia there as we go through the seasons. We can also look at northern hemisphere, or North America, as it goes through its seasons there too. And so we see these seasonal changes. What happens during these seasonal changes? Well, one, temperature change. That's the obvious one. It gets colder when we don't get the direct rays from the sun. And the days don't last as long. So the sunlight, the amount of sunlight changes a lot too. Now, both of these things really impact plants, trees. So here we can see what's kind of interesting actually is if you look closely at the United States here, not only does this snow and ice come down towards the states here, but you also see a change in the color of the vegetation there. And I have another model that I'd like to share with you. This one is called Earth's Green Carbon Machine. And if I fast forward here, and take a look at this, if I fast forward here, the lighter colors, that represents, let's see, what does that? That represents carbon released or carbon absorbed. So this is the amount of carbon dioxide because trees ingest, or plants, I don't want to leave out the algae in the ocean either, but plants ingest carbon dioxide and they respire, or they breathe out oxygen for us. And so here we see if it's a lighter color, that is carbon released. If it's a darker green, that is carbon absorbed. So as we go through the seasons here, we can see the change in the seasons, right? We can see that change. So we have carbon released there. And what time is this? Oh, look, it is January 2007. So this is winter right here. And carbon is released, a lot more carbon released there. And then in the summer months right here, oh, look, May, and then June and July. And then going back into September, November, now carbon is released again. We can see this also really well in in looking at carbon dioxide. Here is a really interesting model showing the carbon dioxide and carbon monoxide levels in the atmosphere. And so we can see, now pay attention here below, we see this is January, so this is the winter months. Reds, the red colors, reds and oranges, represents carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, carbon mixing. If you see any whites, which you'll see soon, that is carbon monoxide. Carbon monoxide is created by humans, pollution, by burning of fossil fuels, etc. You get a lot of carbon monoxide. But here we see a lot of carbon dioxide mixing in the northern hemisphere as we go through the winter months. So it's interesting to see these seasonal cycles in the concentration, the chemistry of our atmosphere. So not only do we get changes in temperatures and daylight, we also get changes in the composition or what the atmosphere is made of. So here you can see May now going into June, and you'll see as the trees get their new leaves and as they wake up from their winter slumber, you can see that carbon dioxide clear up. Look at that. As we go into June and July, all that carbon dioxide really starts to clear up. Why? Because those trees are absorbing that carbon dioxide and then giving off the life-giving oxygen. So here we see the white now. The white is that carbon monoxide, those human-created pollution that happens around the world there. But you get the point that because of our trees, because trees go through their seasonal cycles, that impacts the chemistry, that impacts the atmosphere around the world. And so we really see those seasonal impacts in plant life around the world. So isn't that interesting? Now, not only do trees and plants change because of the seasons, animals also, they change where they live and where they move because of seasons too. This is when animals move from one place to another, we call that migration. So let's take a look at some animals, some migrational periods. I'm going to start off with this fun little... Actually, before I move on, I want to talk just real quick. I put some pictures together to talk real quick about the changes in plant life, or seasonal changes in plants. So here you see a map of the United States. This is when you can expect those changes, those fall colors to come onto the trees. The dark orange here, the dark orange or dark red, is late September, and then going all the way to the yellow, which is early November. And you'll see that it obviously starts in the northern hemisphere, or northern part of the United States, and also in the higher elevations. So both latitude, so how far north you are, and then also elevation, how high you are. That really contributes to the change in fall colors. Now here in Colorado, we see those changes, those fall colors in aspen trees. So our deciduous or leaf-bearing trees are aspen trees. And here is a map of Colorado where and when you can expect aspen to be turning colors this fall. We are in the height of the aspen color change. I know wherever you live, you will have different kinds of trees, whether it's oak or maple. You'll have different kinds of trees which give different colors. And that's one thing that I love about aspen trees is the variety of colors. You can have reds and oranges, or you can have this brilliant yellow color. And these are pictures that I have literally taken this last week as I went out to take a look at those aspen trees. Now the fun part is, as I mentioned earlier, these color changes don't just happen in the United States. These happen all over the world. I was just talking with a young man here at the Space Foundation Discovery Center yesterday, came up from Texas just to explore that fall color change. And what a fun opportunity to go and explore just the seasonal changes in different places around the world. So just as an example, you'll see a lot of color change in Japan because of all the maple trees there. So just thinking about that, color change doesn't just happen where you live. Color change, seasonal changes happen all over the place. So moving back to our animals. So again, did you come up with an answer for which animal travels the farthest during seasonal changes? The answer is the Arctic tern. You guys can look this up. The Arctic tern is a seabird that is born on one of the islands off of the coast of England, Great Britain, and it travels during the Northern Hemisphere's fall. It travels all the way down south to Antarctica for the Southern Hemisphere's summer. So it is such a summer-loving animal that it'll follow the seasons, and it will travel during our fall all the way down to the Southern Hemisphere of Antarctica to experience the spring and summer in the Southern Hemisphere. And then when that changes to its fall, it comes all the way back to the Northern Hemisphere for a round trip of close to 60,000 miles. 60,000 miles in 1 year. That is an amazing, amazing journey. But that's not the only animal that migrates. There are all different kinds of species that migrate. Here we see a humpback whale here. Humpback whales travel over 10,000 miles in their migratorial pattern. They start off the coast of California and the Baja Peninsula, go all the way north to the coastal regions of Alaska, and then come back down. I have some interesting models here to demonstrate that. Here is some loggerhead sea turtle tracks. So this is kind of fun, looking at these turtle tracks here. And watch as this blue, which is the temperature of the ocean, watch as that blue comes south during the seasonal change here, and that pushes the pattern, the swimming pattern of the turtles south as well. How do we know this is where sea turtles go? It's because we can put little trackers on the backs of their shells. Scientists have been able to just literally glue a little tracker that doesn't weigh very much at all, but it tracks where they go. You can just glue that right to their shell and then hitch a ride and see where these sea turtles go throughout the course of a year. And so we can see that their swimming paths are influenced by the seasonal changes there. We also see, here's another fun one. This is looking at the track of a shark right here off the southern coast of South Africa there. As I push play, you can see it move around and track down south a little bit and mostly east to head towards Australia to look for those unsuspecting surfers there off of Australia. No, just kidding. They are looking for, what they're looking for is they're looking for food. And with sharks being an apex predator, they're looking for food, and wherever that food goes, that's where they will go. Now, wherever the food goes depends on the seasons. So there's a really integral link between seasonal changes and animal patterns based on food, survival, and comfort. So there we saw the shark traveling all the way across the Indian Ocean over to Australia. Again, we were able to track that because of tracking devices on animals. Now I'm going to finish with one of my favorites here. This is another really interesting animal migration model, data set here. Here we have bird migration. Okay, so there are 118 dots on this screen here, and those represent basically the central point of 118 different bird species. So these are different kinds of birds and where they travel during the seasons. Now I could literally watch this for hours here as I just follow these central dots here as they travel from place to place over the seasons. I'll let you take a look at that here for a little bit. While I tell you about an interesting space connection, you see, even though our Earth goes through seasons because of space, how do we know where these animals are going? Well, right now, and just recently, scientists are able to track these birds and track these animals because of the International Space Station. You see, on board the International Space Station, there is a special antenna that receives the signals and literally tracks the sensors of where those animals are. This is called Project Icarus. Project Icarus is the international, I think it's collaboration for, I forgot what the A is, but for research of where species are at. So Project Icarus, really interesting space connection to seeing where animals are. We've talked a lot about animals in the ocean migration, and we've talked about birds flying in the air. Land animals go through migratorial patterns too, and it's really important to track and study because we have to share that land with those animals. What we've noticed is that as the seasons change, why is it important to track where animals are? As seasons change, their behavior is going to change as well. If we go to these pictures here, as I bring these up, polar bears in the Arctic, in the northern hemisphere, because of changes in their climate and seasonal changes that aren't quite normal because of changes in temperature, polar bears are coming into cities looking for food because their food chain has moved with the changing of the seasons. Their food chain has moved, and so they aren't able to keep up with those changes because of the food. So polar bears end up more in the cities with humans. And then lastly, elk and deer, we're able to track those now too, and seeing where they move helps scientists and helps humans to predict when and where they're going to be. Because I don't know about you, but if you're traveling on some country roads late at night, chances are you might see a deer, and you don't want to run into those. Well, animals are creatures of habit. They will cross roads in particular places, and so by predicting where those animals will cross roads and which paths they will take on their migration journey, scientists can be able to help these animals to cross roads safely. They will be able to predict when these animals will be in these areas and warn motorists and warn people and help people to set up fence lines and crossing places to prevent animal deaths on roads and car damage. You don't want to be running into a big elk because that'll cause a lot of damage on your car. So just a very interesting and very great application is seasons. As our planet goes through seasons, nature, animals goes through its changes as well. And we see those changes really well using our science on a sphere. And if you guys have questions about these animals as they're going through the seasons, feel free to reach out to us. We would be happy to answer those questions. I hope this has inspired a little bit of curiosity. I hope that you kind of go out and explore, where do animals really go during their migration, and what causes them to leave that one place for another place. So this has been a really interesting and wonderful Weather Wednesday. I hope you enjoyed it. Stay tuned for our next week as we talk more about current events and forecasts of what's going on around the world around us. Thank you guys for joining me, and we look forward to hearing from you. Until next time, have a wonderful Weather Wednesday week.